Hey, what's up everybody, Isaac here with another New World video, and I am continuing the How to Tank series, and we are doing that by bringing you another Lazarus run. So we are showing you yet another potential way you can tank a run, and realistically I'm more or less just being a bruiser, and you can see I got my great axe and I got my hammer on. So this is showing you basically that you can tank all of Lazarus basically in the same way that I showed you my alternative way to tank the barrels. We are just going to constantly chain CC the whole dungeon. So you definitely could get away without somebody even specifically being the tank, but I am wearing heavy armor and my attributes, they are going to be at 100 and 410. So I mean, I'm not gonna be super tanky, but I am the one with heavy armor on, so putting the taunt gems in, and I'm gonna be the one drawing the majority of the aggro. But once again, we're basically just a constant chain CC machine, so just showing you yet another way that you can run dungeons. So my build, my axe, it's basically the same as the Dynasty How to Tank the Barrels, an alternative way. I got 3 crowd control abilities on my axe, and my hammer, I actually sacrificed one of my CCs for the armor breaker, and that is so I can add rend so we can kill things a little bit faster. So if we take a look at my hammer, you can see it's a strong hammer. Definitely recommend going out and get this one if you have not yet. You can farm this one right on this dot. There's a boss there by the name of Batheqet or something like that, basically the same name as this hammer. So highly recommend going and farm this hammer if you have not yet got it. Sundering shockwave, so you're going to apply rend with your shockwave, and then once we have armor breaker as one of our skills, we are going to be able to apply even more rend yet. So Thornton strikes deal 12% additional damage while you have grit, so all of our basic attacks are going to have grit because we are at 410 strength, and you gain grit on your normal attacks at 300 strength, and of course Ancient Bane. So just as a very strong hammer, you know, very near onto that bis type of weapon. And then on my axe, this is actually the one that I used in the video. I did end up buying another one that I used in a later run for, like, this was super cheap, like 900 gold. Had Ancient Bane, Trenchant crits, you know, not that good. Shuriken Lightning, decent since I think Ancient is weak to lightning, but you're doing a lot of dodging, so this is gonna perk fairly often. So, but it doesn't have Enfeebling Maelstrom, which is actually something I really like to have for this dungeon, because look at this, 25% weaken for 8 seconds. That means the enemy is going to do 25% less damage to us when they are hit with Maelstrom. So Maelstrom's a crowd control ability, and it's also going to apply weaken to big large numbers of mobs when we hit them. So we're constantly CCing them, but after we hit a big group with Maelstrom, they're going to do very limited damage to all of us. Shuriken nature, not bad. We are constantly going to be dodging, so it's going to perk fairly often. But I did end up getting a hammer to drop from Lazarus that I wish I had before. Or not a hammer, I mean a axe. So this would have been more like my ideal axe, but it didn't drop until after I ran a couple. So Ancient Bane, Enfeebling Maelstrom, and Vicious. So this would be a very strong axe for me to use for the run, but I didn't have it at the time. So this kind of just goes to show you that in order to get the really good weapons, sometimes you just have to run the dungeons, and that's where the good weapons are going to drop for you. So just get started, find something with Ancient Bane, get started, and maybe it's not a complete best out piece of equipment, but maybe you'll get something to drop. Well, you're running the mutations. So we will show you our build real quick. Shockwave, a must-have with a tank, but regardless, even if we aren't, it's so good, stuns the enemies. We're not going to go over the super thoroughly. Wrecking Ball knocks everything down. We're going all the way to the bottom. And Armor Breaker, we're taking this so we can add more rend. See, we're going to have 5 CCs already, so I feel like it's worth to drop the 1 extra CC. Path of Destiny would be perfectly fine too. If you said, no, I don't want Armor Breaker, I'm going to go complete CC, Path of Destiny would be a great one to have. But we are going for a little bit of extra rend to help mow things down just a little bit faster. And the other weapon we're using, the Great Axe. Showed you this build on my Tank in the Barrels video. Reap, it is the taunt, but it's also crowd control. Maelstrom, it spins and it sucks everything into the middle towards us, so crowd control, bringing everything towards us with the tank. And Gravity Well, probably the best CC ability in the game. So that is the builds that we're using. And there is one place that we are going to pull out our hatchet and our sword, and that's for Cilla. And we do end up cranking our con up to 200 and strength 310 for that part of it. And I would switch back, but just the timing, it's easy just to leave it like that for the rest of the dungeon until we do get to the very final boss, and that is when we respec. We would have been at 200, 310, and then we just go straight into strength, because that's all you need for the last boss, as much strength as you possibly can get. So we mow through this dungeon very handily, as you will see. So basically just a chain CC fest. Like I said, literally you could just not have a tank for this whole dungeon. You could just run it with 4 bruisers and, you know, maybe get somebody to tank just that Cilla, but definitely would be an adequate way to run the dungeon. But doesn't hurt to have one person at least wearing maybe heavy or medium with a taunt, just to help things go a little bit smoother. So let's just jump right into that run. And we're off. Sorry if I have to stop and clear my throat here and there. Voice is a little bit off today, but we start the same way we would start out if it was a normal with me sword and shield and hatchet, that kind of thing. But we go ahead and we taunt the first group with our shockwave, then we run right along to the next phase, and we stack on the archer. So the melee will come to the range will not come to the melee. So we just go ahead and nuke everything on down. So we try to get all the aggro on us as much as we can. Our taunts just aren't going to be as good in this dungeon with this specific build as they are in other things. It's going to be a little bit more difficult for us to gather up everything without big AoE taunts, but you know, you could see we got a pretty aggressive team. They just decided to go for it. They're like light DPS and stuff, so they got rolls and they got better movement than I do. I don't have any movement skills, so they're just kind of going for it. But so you could see, you know, even though it might at times seem like, well, you're not even doing that much because your whole team is just CCing the heck out of them. Well, you can see what happens when they do go in without me. End up getting knocked. Not really the end of the world, because once I get there, we recover, and it's really no problems from there. Nobody else is getting finished off here. I think we only ended up having 1 respawn for this whole game. We would prefer 0, but you can see at this point, we just all have so many CCs that we just completely CC the heck out of everything. And I guess one more guy did end up getting knocked there, so like I said, taunts are going to be quite as perfect with this build. But this build and with this specific group, it's just not about having good taunts. It's just about keeping everything CC'd. And when stuff is CC'd, they really can't hurt anyone. So tried to get my taunt off on them, and I guess it must have missed them. So you can see, though, we are getting some pretty nice juicy hits on everything. But basically all we're doing, we're cycling through all of our abilities. We just lay out all of our CCs. We try and pull out our armor breaker when we think we can hit several different units at once. But between our shockwave and our armor breaker, we're going to be kind of constantly applying stacks of brand here and there. And just super basic. We CC the heck out of everything and we keep on going. So one thing that is kind of painful about this build, like I mentioned before, is the taunts just aren't as good. This is the kind of time when it would be a little bit extra helpful to have something like hated and or despised. So when I'm with my sword and board and hatchet, do not need those. My taunts are so good that I don't need the generic built up hate. I can generate all the threat that I need or could ever want without it. Because I got the big AoE taunts and you can reach a lot of stuff. But with this, my taunts are very limited. Shockwave on the hammer, it's only like a 4-meter radius. And the taunt on my axe, it can actually reach out 8 meters, but it will only reach out 8 meters in one single direction. So you could see here, this named boss, this little mob, I just go ahead and shockwave both of them, get their aggro, and a couple of my DPS at least go and take out the little archer up there. Sometimes you can stack the stuff up on the archer, but sometimes it just gets annoying fighting it up on the ledge, somebody falls off. Honestly, I'd just as soon fight it here. DPS just go and nuke that one archer, and come on down, nuke the boss. Somebody is opening the portal, and sometimes when you bring the fight up near the portal, they can't really work on the portal while you're fighting. So the main goal here is to try and get onto the archer, but I was getting blocked by the units. Super annoying. Tons of slow in this dungeon between the icicles getting dropped every time you kill something, and I think that might be one of the mutations, is when this bar goes up, we get slow on us. And we're just spamming abilities like crazy, so. See, it's all about our abilities. We're just CCing everything, and when we're doing that, we're spamming everything. So, for some reason they wanted to drag this stuff up top. Not too sure why, when you could just come and bring it down here. Typically you're going to end up stacking down here anyways, because when you go to Cilla, you're going to draw more troops here. So you just come, for me, you just come down here and you just nuke all of this stuff here. At this point, somebody should already be at Cilla calling in the next wave, but nobody else was doing it, so I figured, okay, I guess I'm gonna go ahead and do it. Ideally, the tank isn't the one doing this, but they ain't gonna do it, so somebody's got to. But at the end of the day, our team's got some pretty good CCs, so even though they can't handle a lot of damage, they can usually keep things CC'd as much as they need to stay alive. And one thing that is an issue in this dungeon right now with this specific mutation is all the slows and all the roots. You know, you kill a mob and they drop an ice crystal and they can start stunning everybody in place. So it does cause problems if somebody runs ahead and they start killing enemies, and then people start getting rooted and you don't have your whole team in place where they need to be, and it can get pretty hectic. So they got a good group going here, got a nice gravity well to suck everything together, and managed to get here before some of those ads started getting killed. But a run after this, they went and did a similar thing, but a bunch of mobs, a couple of the mobs got killed. We got the little ice crystals, everyone got rooted in place, and we weren't where we needed to be, so everybody ended up dying. Because you get rooted in place, you can't get to the heal, you can't get to the boss to CC them, and everybody just dies. So this is the part where we all gotta go cleanse ourselves, run on through, hit a quick cleanse on the way through, so we're done with that. Just kind of give a tap on some of the mobs. You don't even have to. You could just line of sight everything and then come hide in this little cubby hole. Not everybody even does this. Some will fight everything right at the opening. One person goes in cleanse, and then you drag everything right to the actual opening gate. Fight it right on the boss. But we end up just having a little AoE CC fest here. You know, you can see another person does go down. Gets a little bit hectic, a little bit chaotic. But sometimes it's fun to run things just a little bit different way. And you will see at the end of the video that it does work out pretty darn well. We get a very good time, like 22 minutes something. You know, smash gold very easily. You get 30 minutes to clear it. And we end up getting like 66k points maybe. And you need at least 50. So, very easily smashed. And at the end of the day, that is the goal. So, although things might get a little bit messy here and there at times, not the end of the world because it ends up being a very smooth run. So, at this point, I'm actually avoiding the fight because I want to switch my weapons to get ready for the boss. And once you enter into combat mode, you're on a little cooldown to switch your weapons. So, I go ahead and avoid that fight.
Combat mode so I could change my stuff.
That way, I can get changed. And then I am going to change my attributes as well. Pretty sure I went to 200 con, 310 strength. I guess we'll see in a minute here, but they go ahead and start the fight right away. I'm still changing my attributes, so I actually think someone gets knocked. I didn't want to chance it at 100 con, so yeah, I actually didn't get to the con I wanted. I would have rather just go 200, 300, but they started it and I just didn't have a choice. I just had to go with kind of what was the fastest thing to do and call it good. But no big deal once we get going. We're in a good situation.
This boss.
So I do want to eventually do this whole thing, 100 con, this boss and everything, but just didn't feel like doing it for this run. Didn't feel like chancing it for whatever reason. Play it safe, get above 200 con. It's gonna make you a world of a difference for being more tanky. So, for challenges, it's fun to do, but realistically, there's no need to try and tank this guy at light armor or 100 con, other than just for a fun challenge. So, be the tank, stay alive, and let your teammates do their thing. Let the DPS away. Let the healer heal up somebody that's a little bit more healable than somebody that's getting one shot. As a tank, you definitely don't want to be getting one shot when you can help it. Obviously, if she builds up her stack, she gets stacked up to like 18 or something, she can start getting close to one shot and you, even with like 250 con. So I do have some pots that I can pop, and kind of the same thing as my other video. This part is the same. To have my hatchet and my sword and shield. So when we do start getting close to 10 stacks, that's when I gotta start being a little bit more careful. We get to 10 stacks, I hit her with my shield rush, which actually applies weaken to her. So that is going to make me take less damage. Apply weaken to her, and then she stacks up a couple more times, and I hit my Defiance stance, or my Defiance Defender's Resolve. I forget, they switched the name of it once the GreatSword came in. But so you can see I start taking less damage, but she gets up to 19 stacks, and she catches me in the middle of, you know, an animation. She takes me out at 19 stacks. She hits like a tank. But at this point, she's just about dead. So, no problems. One knock. Well, a couple of us knocked, I guess. But I got knocked once. But still didn't affect the outcome. Got her knocked, got her killed. we got our respawn point, so we are refreshed on our knocks. And right back to our hammer. And I guess I did leave my shield on for this part. Not sure, did I still change it or not? I think I wanted to change, and I did. Respec, okay. Can't remember what I did because I would prefer to respec, but sometimes I don't take the time. But you will see here that my team did end up waiting on me while I was respecking. You know, I was standing on the thing, so I don't know why it didn't go. But I guess I had to restart it. Maybe it's because I was in my backpack. But you can see here, I think my damage or my health, it does go down pretty fast, pretty significantly. Get myself in a little bit of a tough situation. Only at 100 con fighting these mobs, a little bit sketchy. Should probably have stayed at 200 con for this part. 250 con would have even been good. But we recover, we realize that okay, this is gonna actually hurt, so we gotta play it a little bit safer. And that's the problem, you know, sometimes people get too excited about playing a light armor tank or a medium armor tank or a super light con tank. And it sounds good in theory because you're gonna do more damage, but if you're just hiding behind your shield the whole time, you're actually not going to be doing more damage. So the longer you can keep your uptime of your damage, even if when you do hit something, it's not going to hit quite as hard. If you're hitting more often, it's just common sense. You're going to do more damage. So definitely at this part, it would be beneficial actually to be at 200 con. I would be able to do more damage because I wouldn't have to be hiding behind my shield the whole time. And that it is a topic I plan on making a video about. You know, kind of discussing that. Should you play light armor? Should you play medium armor? Should you play heavy armor? How much con should you play?
They have added more adds to this.
You know, there's no perfect answer to that. There's going to be different answer for different people, for different situations, for different groups. But yeah, I was talking about this. You know, my original last video walkthrough, I probably talked about how you got to get every single kill, or you're going to miss gold, unless you're doing a super speed run. Because there's just not enough ads, but they must have added ads because you used to just barely be able to get like 105 ads when you need to hit 100. If you missed a few, you were in trouble. But now you can easily get like 115 to 120 ads if you full clear. So there's actually a few ads that you can skip in here now, which is a bonus. Kind of annoying when you had to be super picky about getting every single ad in the dungeon. So I just kind of go and get a tag on everything just to make sure it's gonna hit me. But then we're gonna go and stack on the archer. The main reason I go and get a tag on those little ads is so they don't go and play games and start monkeying around with our healer. Get their aggro right away. You know, especially since I don't have huge, massive AoE taunts, and since I don't have hated, I don't have despised on my jewelry. Just get the initial aggro on them, and we are good to go. So at this point, we are ready to go and run the gauntlet, I like to call it. And there's these 3 little ads here. I don't remember, did we kill them on this run?
You can skip these,
yeah, we skipped them.
You had so many extra ads.
You used to have to kill them because they won't follow you all the way. They end up retreating. But now that they spawned more ads into the chambers, you can afford to skip them. Kinda nice. So I guess that depends, unless you skip a bunch of ads at the chambers. I think there's a way to do it. You could probably skip the last wave or 2. Then maybe you need to get them. But honestly, I'd say just kind of nuke down those. Whew. Cutting it close there on the health. Got myself down to 1 tap. But we managed. So that's the joys of running 100 con as a tank. You definitely can get yourself into some situations, especially with the slow in this dungeon, and I don't have any movement. That is one thing that would be tempting to do, is switch out one of my abilities for some movement. Take one less CC and get one movement ability. Or I could take an extra CC on my hammer and take one movement ability instead of the armor breaker for rend. But at the end of the day, I do like this build. Just no movement in a dungeon that's got tons of slow and tons of roots. Just a bit annoying. So we are spamming through abilities, but when I remember, I'm mostly going to be trying to hit with my hammer, because it's going to hit a lot harder than my axe. For one, I don't think I had Bane on this specific axe that I was using. Two, Ancient is weak to hammers, so we spam our abilities with our axe, we spam our abilities with our hammer, then we just spam heavy attacks with our hammer. Go ahead and get the taunt on this guy, and then I come stack on the other guy. Hoping they're both going to come to me, and they do. Wasn't sure sometimes, you know, if the DPS that was fighting him has lots of roots and lots of knockdowns. He might hold him in the corner even through my aggro. You know, you can't force something to come to you if it's knocked down, but it worked out. So you can see here, trying to stack things up the best we can. These two archers, sometimes you can get them stacked if you use a couple of gravity wells working in unison with each other, but kind of a pain, and you could say a waste of a double grav well. But not really, because by the time you get to the next place you could use it, the cooldown might be off, and at the end of the day, even if it isn't, not the end of the world, because you definitely can get away without having it for the next spot. So at this spot, I'm trying to change my hatchet, if it'll let me, because I want to change my hatchet for the last boss, and that's mainly because I have rending throw on my hatchet, so that way I have two abilities that add rend. The last boss, he's so simple, it's just we want to DPS him as fast as possible. So if I'm got my rending throw on my hatchet, got armor breaker on my hammer, two rending abilities, and I do have the ancient bane on my hatchet. So go into berserk mode, throw my rending throw, and hatchet away at the boss until my berserk mode is gone, you know, which is obviously gonna help me do more DPS. And then switch to the hammer. Do I end up getting my hatchet changed? Doesn't look like I ended up changing it for this one, but that is just fine because hammer time. Hammer away. Ancients are weak to hammer, so just keep hitting them with that good old hammer.
Yeah, I guess there's no reason.
I do want to do it. We actually don't need both orbs on here, so no point in wasting time. Well, they pointed out to me, and usually everyone just gets both orbs always, no matter what, so kind of why I was sitting on there thinking I'm gonna have to break the thing and set up the orb, but you only do one phase. At M10, you got good DPS. You don't want to wait for the second phase, and if you have to wait for the second phase, that means your DPS is way too low. You need to get that DPS up. So this boss is kind of a boring boss, kind of annoying boss. So we back up, and mainly just so we don't get CC'd when the boss falls down on his face. That means we can go right to work on him. We're not losing a couple of hits. You know, if you get CC'd, this is the time when you can do some crazy heavy damage. You know, we're hitting for like 30k. And if we get CC'd and we miss out on a couple of attacks, heck, that could be 60 to 90k worth of damage that we miss out on. Versus you could see when he's not in that weakened state, we're only hitting him for 8k damage. Which obviously isn't a terrible amount, but it certainly isn't 30k either. You know, 3 hits to get to 90 when you're at 30k versus to get to 90 at 8. Well, that's going to take you like 11, 12 hits. But there it is, 22:19. Pretty decent time. So let me know, what'd you think? You gonna give it a try? Definitely fun to switch things up. You definitely do need a reasonably strong group to run like this, but at the end of the day, just constant chain CCs, it's really nothing special. If you get a whole team full of hammers and axes, you shouldn't have too much problems with it. So give it a try. Let me know how you like it.